You have to add yourself back to the stage. I'll write to him. Oh, not yet. Sorry.
Oh, I'm here.
All right, we're live, Alex. How are you doing?
Very good, very good. Got the holidays out of the way. Round two deadlines have come and gone in a flash, and now we're seeing interview invites starting to
Yeah.
appear on Livewire. So yeah,
Yeah.
happy post holidays greetings, everyone.
Yeah, I see we got a couple people that have already jumped on. I suspect more will be joining momentarily. But as we kind of warm up here, yeah, your holidays were good. I know you got some downtime. We all did, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, very good. But obviously, a very busy time for folks that were applying in round two. Schools all having those deadlines condensed to that first week after the break. So hopefully, folks are being able to take a bit of a deep breath now as they wait to see if they get interview invites. I guess that's the stage we're at.
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to be the focus, I think, for today's discussion. Although, as usual, we'll take any questions that come our way. If you want to talk round one decisions or dilemmas or anything about your MBA application strategy, we're always happy to answer your questions. And just as a reminder, I sometimes feel like we don't do any kind of backgrounding. So I just want to mention Alex and I know each other because we both used to work in the admissions office at Wharton. Alex actually served there as a senior associate director of admissions at Wharton for more than 7 years. And I was a current student at Wharton, got involved in the admissions office, started working with Alex after I graduated. We did some cool tech-oriented stuff for Wharton with regards to admissions and using all kinds of fun forums and things to take the application process a bit more digital back then. And then I left to co-found ClearAdmit, and Alex came on board eventually after that to join. So that's kind of the backstory. We've got a ton of, obviously admissions experience. So over the last, more than 20 years now, we've been focused exclusively on getting into sort of top MBA programs. So that's the background. And obviously, I presume everyone joining us today knows about clearadmit.com and all the resources that are, for the most part, I think all of them now are free on the website, all the AI stuff, and we'll get into it. But Alex, I want to, can you just walk us through a little bit about the interview process for business schools? And because I think a lot of the folks joining us have probably applied in round two and are waiting for interviews. And if I had to guess, one of those schools that they're waiting for might be Harvard Business School. So can you tell us, like, when are those invitations coming? What's going on generally with interviews?
Sure. Yeah. And folks, please use the chat to post your questions. That way, we'll tailor this live stream specifically to what you want to know and stuff. So, yeah, as stated, please drop your questions in the chat. That will be great. So, yeah, in terms of the season, round two deadlines have come and gone. And schools basically operate in two different fashions in terms of how they roll out interview invites. So if you go to Livewire, you'll see plenty of interview invites um, trickling out for different schools. Kellogg, you'll see lots of interview invites. Yale's another. and so on and so forth. But there are then certain schools that like to release interview invites in batches, one batch or possibly two batches. And those sort of bigger rollouts tend to start with Harvard and HBS. If we were going to gamble a little bit, we would say HBS will roll those out on Monday, um, and um, and will announce that they're going to roll them out on Friday. That would sort of mimic what they did in the first round, but also be similar to what they've done in years gone by, and so forth. So HBS will lead off, and then we'll get Wharton probably about 2 weeks later. I know we've got the official date for Wharton. It's February 20th when they roll out all their interview invites. Between those two, we'll see batches come out from Ross, from Booth, and maybe one or two others, Sloan possibly, or Sloan might actually be just a little bit after Wharton. But we do have um, a resource available to folks on the Clearimage site that sort of predicts when these interview invites start rolling out, et cetera, et cetera. So I encourage folks to study that resource. Now, we have a question. So, Graham, I think I don't have the access rights to post the question. So I think you probably do.
I
There
do.
we go.
And I've just
So,
dropped it in there. Yep.
yeah. So our first question, and I'll ask it to you, Graham. What should be our attire for a virtual interview?
Yeah, I think your attire should be the same as if it were in person. I mean, it's certainly you can't go wrong doing that. Now, I will say, post pandemic, I think back in the days, Alex, when you and I were doing interviews for Wharton, everyone would show up in a full suit, tie, etc. And I do think things are slightly less formal nowadays, as we've seen. But I still think if you're a guy, you're wearing a button-down shirt, probably a blazer or some kind of a jacket. And if you're a woman, the equivalent, whether that's a nice blouse, et cetera, like it should be formal. This is not sweatpants and casual attire. You need to respect the process. And I know it sounds silly. People, especially look at a lot of tech companies, people are walking around in jeans and t-shirts, but for this purpose, I really think it makes sense to just dress the part. I don't know if you agree with that, Alex, but that's my take.
No, absolutely. I would completely agree with that. And I think it also gives you a little sense of confidence, right? And that's important coming into the interview. You want to look sharp, you want to look prepared. And I think looking formal is never going to be a bad thing, right? Now, some schools might be more open for you to be a little bit more casual, but some schools might not be, right? Whereas I don't think any schools would be less open to folks that show up in a formal, um,
Right.
courteous way, etc., etc. So I would
Yeah. No, that was a
always,
really good.
yeah, I
Yeah.
I
Good. That
would
was a
all,
good one.
yeah, always veer on being formal, and especially things can go wrong, right? You might have to get up and shut a door or answer some knock on the door or something. If you get up and all you got is your boxers on and you start walking out a screenshot with your boxers, it's probably
Not a
not a
good
good
call.
look.
No. And
In,
yeah. I would just add there could be the only exception I can think of is if you're doing an interview with an alum who expressly tells you, like, hey,
yeah,
just so you know, informal attire is fine. I'm not dressing up like that. And that does happen occasionally, especially sometimes in person interviews. Someone might say, we're meeting at a coffee shop. Please don't, it's fine.
yeah,
But normally, you just always better to err on the side of that, of being a little bit more uh cautious and well dressed. So I
yeah,
actually want to just while we're kind of waiting for the next question to come in, I just want to just show one thing if you'll bear with me here. So you were mentioning that we have this chart on our website. I just wanted to show
yeah,
people. So this is the chart. Um and it's quite long. I mean, it's got all the kind of leading business schools in the world, but we have this kind of what's the school? This is all for round two. So when was their deadline? When do we estimate those interview invites to start flowing, or the date that they're going to be issued if it's a school that does them all at once? And then we keep this updated with like, well, when did they actually do it? We also indicate historical data, like when did it come last year? And then obviously, when are you going to get your final admissions decision? And whether the interview invite process is kind of rolling or a set date, et cetera. So this is based on the data that we have
And
in on.
can,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
not to interrupt you, Graham, but are you actually showing this chart?
Yeah, are you not seeing it?
Not seeing it. Yeah. So just to let you know, we need
Hopefully.
to. There we
Oh,
go.
there we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
guys.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you can see this chart and, essentially, yeah, we're trying to, just give you a sense to help. I mean, a lot of this is nerves. People get really worried. And so it's nice to see there's these broad windows for those schools that trickle out invites in many instances.
Yeah.
You take a school like Yale, which, they often get some interview invites out right away. That's kind of when we expect the first, interview invite. But then last year, you can see they flowed from the 13th of January all the way through almost mid-February, right? So
Yeah.
there's a range for a lot of these schools, and it's important to remember that.
Yeah.
In any event, that's on the site, and it's a really good resource, and just wanted to make people aware of that. So,
Yeah.
but back to yeah. So looks like we've got some other questions coming in. Someone says, "What can we expect to be asked?" That's a broad one, but Alex, I'll let you tackle it because I think it's a good starter.
Sure. And it'll vary a little bit from school to school, right? From different MBA programs, and some of the degree of variability will be determined by whether it's a resume-based interview, or an interview that's based on the application itself. Application materials, much like Harvard and Stern, maybe,
Hmm.
Sloan a little bit more, or whether it's a completely blind interview, and that would be Darden, for example. So, depending on what the interviewer knows about you, they'll want to learn about you. They'll want to learn why you're applying to this school. What are your post MBA career goals? How have you gotten to where you've gotten today? So talk about your career journey. So you might get asked right at the beginning, tell me a little bit about your career choices that bring you from your university to where you are today, and so on and so forth. So a lot of career focused questions: why my school, why MBA, etc. So think of that about that as a broad bucket of questions, and then there'll be questions about your potential leadership experiences. There'll be questions maybe about how you make decisions, maybe an ethical type question. How do you make decisions in times of uncertainty, etc., etc. So really thinking about your individual experiences, and how you can effectively portray them to answer some really basic questions about team experience, leadership, ethics, behavioral type questions, basically, is what I'm saying. So, a lot of career focused questions: why MBA, why now, why my school, and then a lot of behavioral type questions, and so forth. And also figure that if you've for most of these top schools, it's interview by invitation. So you've already gotten over a hurdle to get the interview. So maybe the school invites 50% of those that apply. And really, your interview, to a large extent, is affirming to the interviewer what's already in the application. So there might be quite a bit of repeat type of questions, and so forth. Anyway, Graham, I'll let
Yeah,
you
and
sort
and
of
I
play off of that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good summary of like the basics. Obviously, this person followed up with a question about, whether or not if they're younger and they have relatively limited work experience, whether the questions they get might be different. And I would argue that, maybe to some extent, but typically, they're going to want to ask about your work experience no matter what. And so it's going to be more of a focus on, what are the milestones, accomplishments, instances of teamwork, leadership, managing up. And so I wouldn't, I think, and I would also argue that this varies depending on whether you're in a blind interview or an application based interview. Because obviously, if you're interviewing at HBS, they've read your file, and they've gone through it very, very carefully just before the interview, and they're going to have crafted a set of questions that are really tailored to your background. Now, we know what a lot of those questions are in terms of the typical kind of paths they take because so many people have posted to the Clear Admit interview archive over the years. So we know they're going to ask probing questions about, why did you join this company and what do you find hard about your job, or what are challenges you faced, et cetera. But I would expect if you've had relatively limited work experience and the school knows your file, they may probe a bit to find out whether
Yeah.
you've got enough, kind of leadership, teamwork, et cetera, to contribute in the classroom. But yeah, no, I think that's a good summary. Alex, we got the questions are kind of flowing fast and and furiously now, so I'm going to throw another one up on screen. And this is kind of interesting because it's a good yin to the first question, yang there, because this is for an older candidate, right? So they're wondering, if you're older and you're doing a career change, which is very common for business school, right? Changing your either function, industry, geography, or maybe even all three. What would someone expect though if they're proposing to do that sort of thing?
I would expect, certainly for an older candidate, that this is a well-developed, well thought through plan post MBA, right? So it's a very deliberate, I want to pivot. I know exactly why I want to do this. I know why this school is a great platform for me to make this pivot, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that I will be successfully recruited from the school into that career, right? So I've done the diligence and the research to really understand that this is a very realistic endeavor based off of my own parameters and profile and so forth. And I think if you can check all those boxes, then you shouldn't be concerned relative to any other issues, um, interviewing, or even again in the essay portion of the application. And again, if you are interviewing at a school that has invited you to interview and they've read your application and made that decision, then they buy into it too to some extent, right? You've overcome a hurdle. But older candidates have to really be very deliberate about why they're doing this, their choices. They're more seasoned, they've thought about it more, etc., etc. And you're pivoting, and that why now? So maybe the interviewer in the back of their mind said, "Why didn't you do this 2 years ago? Have you sort of missed the beat there, or something like that?" So yeah, I think a bit more focus on why now, very deliberate about thinking everything through. And then the other thing, just as an older candidate, how are you going to engage in the MBA experience? Because again, the stereotype is older candidates might be distracted with other stuff, family, etc., and not be fully embracing the 2 year experience. So activity in clubs, and conferences and various other things. Yeah.
Yeah, I could not. I mean, that's you've said everything that needs to be said about this. The only thing I would add, I guess, is just that if you feel like your application wasn't as strong as it could be in connecting these dots, then the interview might be an opportunity to really underline and make sure that the interviewer understands the logic and rationale behind this pivot. Because it could be that an application reader is like, engineer wants to go into investment banking, hard to understand how that's going to happen. And so if you haven't connected the dots in your essays, this would be a good opportunity to show that, in your spare time, you've pursued the, CFA or whatever you've been doing to kind of position yourself for these types of roles. But yeah, older candidates need to show fit and dedication because as Alex said, there's always this risk of them being a bit distracted or less engaged in the community.
Yeah.
Um, let's go. We've got some other questions that have come in. This is another really good one. This is, I think, the same person that asked us about attire. So two for two here. Should we tell the same stories that we've written in the essays? So, yeah, Alex, what do I do? And I have a feeling you're going to give a two-pronged answer to this. But yeah, what's the story here?
Well, I mean, I just think you need to give the best story to answer the question, right? And the question might be slightly nuanced from the types of questions asked in the essay, so that might lead to a different story to answer that question. But if I wrote about something in the essay and my interviewer asked me a question where that particular experience is the best example to address that particular question, I would absolutely use it in the interview because the interviewer is going to write up a report that's focused on that interview and what they learned about you from that interview. So I wouldn't be deliberately steering clear of everything I wrote in the essays. Now, the counterpoint to that is the interview is a good opportunity to add additional experiences to your overall profile, especially if you've had a recent promotion, etc. Since your application. Then you could talk about some of that in the interview. But quite honestly, Graham, I wouldn't be hesitant to repeat a story if it's really the best story to answer that particular probing question.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is obviously with a school like an HBS or a Sloan where it's a non-blind application-based interview, they're likely to say to you something like, "Hey, in your application, you talked about
Yeah,
doing this," and they're gonna peel that onion and wanna go a layer deeper or 2 or 3 layers deeper than you did in the application materials. So, I think it would be unwise to just, spit back out exactly what you said in the application. You got to go deeper with those schools that know your file. But by all means, when you're in a blind interview, you picked these stories for a reason in your
yeah.
application. And so you should tell them again. It's totally fine. They're the most compelling stories. I want to throw you a curveball, Alex, because we have a bunch of interview questions, but this one came in that's a non-interview question. It's kind of a fun one. So I'll just throw it at you. It's a decision wire type question. So I hope this person will post to Decision Wire if they haven't already, which is a tool on our website where you can get feedback from Alex and other people in the community. But this person's got into Kellogg and Fuqua, full price for Kellogg, whereas they have a $65,000 scholarship at Fuqua. Obviously, they're happy to have both of those acceptances. They're trying to figure out where to go. Looks like they're maybe from India, did 6 years in tech in India, and are hoping to do short term work in product management. So, what do you think about this, Alex?
It's a classic dilemma, right? So you've got Kellogg, which is an M7, and it's in that tier with Booth and Columbia and Sloan. And you've got Fuqua, which is in the you could argue the next tier, but if not the next tier, the following tier, certainly within that top 16, right? Both very good programs. So if you're talking any of these programs in the top 20, they're very, very good. But the M7 does give you a little bit more access to opportunity, a larger alumni network, more resources, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how the sort of you think about the rankings. That's sort of how you got to think about it. More in tiers like we do, so and the opportunities that the schools can provide. So more opportunity at Kellogg, but is it worth 65K? That's the question for this candidate. And then the answer again is not clear cut, right? It's your the risk that of taking on the extra debt versus the risk of not going to the school that provides you most opportunity, right? So which risk is higher? And that
Mm,
will be different for individual candidates. And, in terms of their risk tolerance for taking on the debt, in terms of risk tolerance for having, I mean, if you have an outstanding resume and, et cetera, et cetera, you could probably go to Fuqua and get almost as good, if not as good, an opportunity as going to Kellogg if your resume is absolutely outstanding. And not forgetting that the leader of one of the largest companies on the planet was a Fuqua MBA, right? So it'd be ridiculous to suggest that the opportunities aren't there at Fuqua, but they are there in a little bit more bountiful at Kellogg. So it's a $65,000 question, Graham. There's no one
yeah.
absolute black and white
Yeah.
answer.
I would say some of it comes to risk appetite, like you're saying.
Yeah,
How comfortable are you going into that debt? Knowing that you might have to return, if you're from India and don't have U.S. citizenship, it's possible you would have to go back to India afterwards. So that plays into the calculus as well. I mean, I will say both these are really great community schools. I mean, they just
yeah,
are both close knit, super friendly environments, slightly different campus settings. I mean, Duke's in much smaller Durham, kind of a leafy campus. Evanston, where Kellogg is a beautiful part of the kind of Chicago region. But you're more of an urban setting as you head into the city there. So just different kind of environment for those 2 years. But yeah, it just depends on where you want to be. I would look at the placement stats specifically into product management. I would also look at the geographies, like, do you want to be in the Southeast or Mid-Atlantic, Northeast? Do you want to be in the Midwest or out West? Some of these schools are stronger than others in certain areas. So anyway, thanks for kind of taking that little diversion, Alex. But let's go back to interviewing. So we've got someone with this question about English fluency, and I think this is a really good one. I mean, it's how critical is English fluency? This person was denied at CBS, waitlisted at Fuqua in round one, despite having M7 level stats, and they feel like their interview performance was hindered by their speaking skills, which I mean, certainly possible. What do you make of that, Alex?
yeah. I mean, frankly, it could well be an issue, right? obviously with an MBA program, communication is vital to make the most out of the program. So for your benefit to make the most out of the program, as well as for the benefit of other students, etc., so that you can contribute most and so on and so forth. So one of the values of the interview is the school can gauge your fluency, and so forth. So I'd certainly suspect that that might be the case. But you say you were denied at Columbia and waitlisted at Fuqua both after interview invites. Now, even if you have M level, M7 level stats, you could still be denied at Columbia and waitlisted at Fuqua, and have great English, right? So it's
Yeah.
not just I've got the average, the median stats for here, so this school should admit me thing. It's going to be also obviously based off of your professional experience, and your why MBA, etc. That's got to knit very well with the schools that's interviewing you and so on and so forth. But it certainly could be English communication skills, Graham, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, obviously depends on your career background, career goals. Like, did you sort of blend in to the pack and that led to you not being selected? But if you think English is an issue, I would, I mean, this is where practice makes perfect. And
Yeah,
we have some good questions below about practicing for interviews, and we'll
yeah,
actually talk a little bit about that in depth. But it is important to practice with either with your phone, with a tool that we'll talk about that we've just released, or with a friend, whoever you can. I mean, you have to practice, and the more that you work on delivering these answers, and frankly, I mean, there's about like 20 questions that if you spent a lot of time practicing, working on your stories for, you could be in very good shape. So yeah. Anyway, I hope that things go better in the second round if you're waiting on interview invitations. But thanks for that question. Alex, we got a lot of questions, so I'm just going to keep kind of zipping through here. This is actually a really good one. How often do you recommend doing interview prep, and what kind of preparation should candidates be doing beforehand?
Well, I think as you pose that question, Graham, I think you should share our interview,
Oh,
simulator, and
yeah.
we'll
Okay.
just
We can show
show.
people. Yeah.
So we're going to
Okay.
take 5 minutes to do a show and tell of our interview simulator that we released literally within the last week. Um, as a platform for doing interview prep. So part of this question is what kind of preparation should candidates do beforehand? It's tried to simulate a real MBA interview experience. So we've developed this tool to hopefully allow you to do that.
Yeah, so
So
this is the interview simulator that we just have built and released what last week, right, Alex? Is that when we? Yeah, it
yes,
was last week.
yeah. So if you
Um,
go to clearadmit.com/interview, you get to this page. So if you click get started, Graham,
yeah,
so the interview simulator tool allows you to put in your resume, which most schools will have access to your resume. You'll bring it along or whatever it is, and then the interviewer will have it in front of them. So if you drop the resume in there, Graham, so we've predetermined this. I've created a fake resume, and then click
yeah.
next.
All right. What school do you want to interview for?
Yeah, so now you can select, and we've got about 15 schools up
20.
on this list, 20
There are 20.
schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, Wharton's not one of them because that's a team-based interview, so that's a completely separate thing. But mostly all the other top schools. So if we click on Haas, Graham,
Okay.
I only
Is
say
that where you
Haas
want to
because
go?
it's the very top one.
Okay. So you can see this, right? Everyone can see this. It's getting ready
Yeah.
to interview me.
I just
Yeah.
realized, Graham, you'll probably have to answer the question, so just make up some answer. Um,
Good
can it hear
afternoon,
me?
Samantha.
Can you hear that?
Thank you for your interest in Berkeley Haas School of Business and for taking the time to speak with me today. I was really impressed to see how you've grown Green Steps International from a pilot project into a social enterprise, impacting over 30,000 households across multiple countries, as well as your leadership in raising significant seed funding and partnering with organizations like the UNDP and World Bank. I'm looking forward to hearing about your journey. Can you walk me through your professional path so far and share what has inspired you to pursue an MBA here at Berkeley Haas?
So,
Now, Alex, I don't know this person that you gave me the resume for, but
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
feeling quite
I'll,
flattered that I've
I'll
done
see
all
if
these
it pick.
amazing things.
Yeah, I'll see if it picks up my audio. So click speak.
Oh, I don't think it will. I don't. Well, let's. I don't. I don't think it's going to because I'm wearing. Well, we can try.
Okay, you answer. Just say some nice things. Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second. Thanks for taking the time to interview me. I'm really excited to be here today, and yeah, I appreciate you looking over my resume and underlining some of the things that I've accomplished with UNDP and the World Bank. I'm, it's been a really interesting journey. I'm very passionate about the intersection of public and private and the ways that NGOs, non-governmental organizations, can help with problems around the world. And frankly, that's kind of what's led me to Berkeley Haas. I mean, obviously, the University of California at Berkeley has an amazing reputation in this domain, and Haas specifically, I feel, will give me the tools that I need to be able to move from a kind of person, working in nonprofit to someone who can really sit at the intersection of business and nonprofit. So it worked.
Yeah. So
That's the
once
danger, Alex, when you
Graham,
make me do this stuff on live TV, if it doesn't work.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you
So
for sharing.
once Graham, think,
Oh, she's
okay,
responding.
Understand how your passion for the intersection of public and private sectors has shaped your path and your interest in Haas. Building on that, could you tell me more about your short and long term career goals and how you see the MBA at
What
Haas
Alex, what are
enabling
my
you to achieve them?
what are my short and long-term goals? Give me something that I can tell
you're going
her.
to stick with green steps and grow it.
Oh, that's the
So
company I
quick,
currently
quick
run?
speak.
Okay. All right. Okay. In the short term, I'm hoping to continue running Green Steps, the company that I've started, but I need to grow it. And that's where the MBA comes in. I'm looking to build the kind of managerial toolkit. I've got to do fundraising. I need to learn how to better manage finance within the company. And there's just so many things that I'm hoping to pick up at Berkeley Haas that will help me to grow Green Steps into a global organization. Did she like that?
Thank you for
She
outlining those goals. Given your focus on scaling Green Steps and strengthening your managerial skills, could you share a specific challenge you've faced so far in managing or fundraising for the company and how you approached it?
Okay,
so just
stop
so
the
everyone
end the
knows.
interview. Yeah, end the
Oh, we'll just
interview.
end it. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay. So I'm gonna hit end interview. I'm not gonna get a
yeah,
good grade though, because I'm
that's
just
fine.
bailing. Oh,
And
okay, now I
then
gotta put in
put
my
your
stuff.
details in.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, alright, hold on.
And I
Alright.
think actually
Everyone's gonna
that
get my
last
email
question,
now.
I'll just talk to the audience whilst you're doing that. That last
I'll just put
question,
yeah.
dialogue, is a really good example of, the interviewers asked a line of questions and then pivoted to ask now for more detail on a particular experience, right? So you expect to see that in your MBA
What yeah.
type interview. But what we've done with this bot is obviously trained off of some really detailed content from Clear Admit. We've got the interview archive, we've got interview guides, etc., etc. So a lot of work in that. So you can go through what I would consider to be a very realistic MBA interview experience, but then you get feedback.
Oh, hey, it
And
still gave me a 6 out of 10, which isn't bad considering
yeah,
I guess it's basing on what I did answer
so
maybe,
so
but anyway.
so let's determine, why did Graham get 6 out of 10 for this interview? Obviously, it was cut short and so forth.
Yeah.
But frankly, Graham's resume is outstanding. He doesn't know that. But that
I had no idea
resume,
what I'm yeah. Yeah,
everything that
'cause
he done, absolutely brilliant. But if you look at self-awareness and growth, only 5. If you look at
oh,
school
okay.
fit and knowledge, only
Oops.
4. For a couple of
Oh,
reasons. One, we didn't complete the interview, and 2, he didn't really make a good, even when he did answer, he didn't make a good posit as to
well,
why
that's your
in
opinion. I mean,
particular, right? But my broader point is the interview bot, the interview simulator does 2 broad things for you as you're prepping, for those that are prepping. One is it gives you a realistic interview experience based off of your resume, your CV. And secondly, gives you a really detailed report that is actionable. So action items for your next interview. So for those of you that are really unfamiliar with MBA interviews, the process, I really am excited to see how well this simulator is adopted. The,
Yeah, no.
I didn't create it. I just helped provide some feedback. The guy on our team that created it is just a genius. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to be clear, one of the things that we've done over the last 20 years is gather firsthand interview reports. So people who interview at these schools post them to our site. I'm sure many of you have seen them. And actually, I'm going to remind all of you, if you use these resources, the really great thing to do afterwards is to share your interview experience, because that's how this works, right? It's a pay it forward kind of vibe. It's free for everyone. So but we trained our AI tool on all these interview reports, as well as discussions we had with admissions directors at these schools and all kinds of things. So, anyway, sorry for the segue, but I just thought it'd be useful to show that. I
Yeah.
didn't realize it was going to be put on the spot so much, but I managed to get through. I still got what, a 6 out of 10. I mean, I'll take
Yeah,
it.
but like I
All right,
say,
let's.
most of that was based off of the resume.
Yeah. Oh, thanks a
So
lot. All right.
yeah.
This is a good one, Alex. What are some big things to avoid during an interview? Not knowing your own
Um,
resume.
well, I mean, what to avoid is not prepping effectively, right? So not to again keep pushing our own interview simulator. There are other ways to prep for sure, but you cannot be overly prepared for an interview. Some of the big things to avoid: don't script your answers.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you could be overprepared in that sense.
Yeah, yeah. So don't script your answers, but if you're really, really well prepared, you don't need to script your answers, right? So
Mhm.
that's always my thing. Really know your application going into the interview. You wrote those essays, you've had those experiences, so you should know your application. And that's the best way to prepare. Obviously, simulate some of the actual interview with a tool like ours is very good. Um, Obvious things to avoid: make sure you know which school you're interviewing with. That might get a bit more tricky, I suppose, with virtual interviews. If you actually go to the school location, it might be a bit more obvious to use the right school, the right resources at the school that you talk about, and so on and so forth. You want to come across with humility and grace. So don't, I mean, this sometimes it can be a cultural thing, but yeah, the these top MBA programs are interviewing superstars across the board, right? So coming across with humility, despite the fact that you've got a great resume, is a super combination, right?
Yeah,
Um, so
you're
so I would say personal qualities really shine through. The other thing is, don't piss anyone off on campus whilst you're there, because they'll stick a note in your file and that will doom you.
yeah, in fact, that's a really good reminder that, I remember when we were in the office at Wharton, the folks at the front desk in the waiting area who, seemingly kind of administrative assistants, to the interviewees coming in, they would kind of observe people's behavior in that waiting
Yeah,
room and sometimes tell us, "Hey, this guy's kind of a jerk, asking me to make him coffee," or, whatever, right? So be careful. Everyone, as Alex says, everyone you interact with on a campus when you're doing an in-person interview is someone who, could have a potentially an impact on your file. Um, there's some
yeah,
additional questions
and
here.
I would
Oh,
just add one more thing. Just have good self-awareness, right? If the
yeah.
interview is scheduled for 30 minutes, that interviewer might have two interviews to conduct every hour for the next 4 or 5 hours. So as be conscious of time, etc., etc.
Yeah. We have some questions that are non-interview, but I'm going to stick. There's one more interview related
Yeah.
question that's come in. And this one is someone's asking for insight into Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton interview movement. So do you want to just comment on when each of those are coming? And then this person says they were already admitted to Tuck and Darden, but they're actually thinking about turning those offers down. Presumably they got in one of the early rounds, and maybe coming back with a good score next year, and they're wondering, would that hurt? Does the school, it's sort of like if you tell somebody you don't want to go on a date with them and then you ask them out the next, 6 months later, are they going to say yes, or are they going to still be hurt from the last time? So I'll let you take a stab at these, Alex.
Yeah, there's always a risk, right? You turn school down, you might not get in the next year, but you might well get in, right? On the assumption that you're coming back with a better test score, but also growth. So don't just rely on the better test score and you've sort of paddled water, or whatever the right term is, in terms of your career and so on and so forth, just because you're waiting for that better test score to get into a better school or something like that. So the AdCom will expect you to have continued on a very positive trajectory, sorry, when they're looking at your profile the following year and so forth. So there's some risk involved, but if you know you're going to come back with a stronger test score, then you're mitigating. But frankly, your goal that next year won't be to get into Tuck or Darden. Otherwise, you'd have gone this year and you've got the extra year's benefit of getting your MBA a year earlier, right? So your goal, if you turn them down, is to actually get admitted to M7 or M7 plus or whatever the following year anyway. So what is happening, Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton? We predict Harvard will release interview invites in one batch, and that'll be on Monday. That's our best guess of next week. It's possible it's Friday of this week, but I would imagine most likely it's going to be the following week, with Monday being the most likely. And Wharton, we know it's February 20th. They release all those interview invites in one batch, as does Harvard. They just don't publish far ahead of time when that is. And Stanford, I think, has started trickling those interview invites out. So Stanford does it differently. They will every day or whatever it is through the week trickle out interview invites over quite a long period of time,
Yeah, very
probably
long
a
period.
month and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. So, one comment on this sort of Tuck and Darden thing. I mean, I would say if you've applied to Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton in round two, I would make the decision around Darden and Tuck based on what happens
Yeah.
with, like if you don't get any interviews for these schools, um, I kind of it might not be worth it. I mean, it'd be good to know more about your background, obviously, to give you more direct advice on this, because by looking at your background, might have a better sense as to whether it's really the test score that's going to make the difference here or not. Um, yeah, and as Alex points out, there is a cost to getting your MBA 1 year, later, so that's
Yeah.
something to factor in as well, and, Tuck and Darden are really good really good schools, so you've already kind of cleared a pretty big hurdle, so I would yeah, I mean, not knowing your background, my temptation would be see what happens in round 2 here with some of these schools, but if not, you might I mean, it's kinda hard to walk away from an offer at Tuck and say, "Well, I'm gonna apply next year." I mean, these schools are still top schools, so,
Yeah.
um we've got another question in. This is a quick one. While we're talking about top schools and ranking, someone asked how we would rank Texas McCombs. And that's,
I would say,
yeah,
yeah, if you want to work in Texas post MBA, then Texas McCombs is a fantastic program for you, right? I mean, it's very regionally focused, and Texas, we know as a business hub, is growing, right?
yeah, big time.
For a variety of different reasons. Um, on an international national level, I would put McCombs in the top 21 tier. Graham and I argue a little bit about these tierings, but I put it in the tier with Goizetta, with Keenan Flagler, with McDonough, and with Tepper, although Graham would argue Tepper
Argument.
might be slightly in the higher tier, and there's probably one other, and Marshall. I should have mentioned 5 programs in that tier. So, and what we mean by tiers is these programs are comparable, and so it becomes down to personal choice, career choice, which of those 5 programs is better for the individual candidate, rather than an ordinal ranking that says program 18 is better than program 20. We would rather bucket them into tiers
Yeah.
because we think that's much more reflective of the marketplace.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think that, I mean, UT has a network that's quite
Yeah,
established in California as well,
yeah,
kind of across the South and West. So I think it depends on, like what's the industry you're curious to enter. But I will say we've heard a lot about, Texas is opening up its own stock exchange, the
yeah.
TXC, which will, compete with the NYSE. So there's a lot of momentum in Texas, also around corporate governance, and so yeah, I think I mean it's obviously a great school. People rave about it. People are incredibly passionate. Probably rivaled only by Michigan Ross in terms of school spirit. So it's a special place, and I think, but yeah, certainly a top 20 MBA program for sure.
Someone's
Let's
asking
see.
about Mendoza, and I just put them in the next tier. Yeah,
Oh yeah, they're that. Yeah, they would be beyond that.
yeah,
Probably with oh gosh, with, Ohio State,
Kelly,
bunch of other
Indiana
schools,
Kelly. Yeah,
Vanderbilt, maybe.
yeah,
Yeah, so
exactly.
all these are
Yeah,
great schools. These are all, top 25-ish
yeah,
schools, right?
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so shout out to MH Kim who congratulated me on my improvisation. Um,
I
when
thought it
that was
was the
back when we were doing the interview.
improvisation of the interviewer, not the interviewee.
No, I thought
But,
I don't
yeah,
know. All right,
mm,
fine. All right, follow up on this whole Tuck Darden thing. So this person says that, oh, so they applied to Tuck and Darden with a waiver. And then they got it and studied for 2 weeks and got a 317 on the GRE and decided to just throw in an app to Harvard, Stanford, Wharton. Um, yeah, that's gonna be tricky. I feel like have we talked to this person before? Maybe not. It's sounding familiar to me now, right? Yeah. So, um, yeah, I think, then they add with more time, they could get the score up, with some prep, et cetera. So, yeah, it's an interesting quandary.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
there's a ways to
and
go from
again, if they're
317.
targeting scholarship, that's so there is a whole 'nother layer to it, right?
Yeah,
So I
you
get
need
that.
330.
Yeah.
If
But
you
the
want
key
scholarship.
is, yeah, the key though will be keep growing your professional career. Show some improvement there, not just in the test score. So, and I know that
Yes,
makes sense.
because
Yeah,
if Darden or Tuck were to ask you next year, "Oh, why did you have to have a reason that's more professionally oriented. Oh, there was the opportunities for growth at
yeah,
work, and I wanted to take a year to do that."
yeah,
You could also be honest and say, "I wanted to take the test and try to put myself in play for scholarship dollars." That would be a fair thing to say too. But in any event, yeah, so that's my take on that.
yeah.
Let's see, what else do we have here? Ooh, you know what, Alex? I think let me see here. Yeah, so any other just general interview stuff that you wanna offer up? Because I don't see any additional questions that have come in right now, unless I missed one.
We've got what schools are friendly to older candidates with
Oh,
15
yeah, let
plus
me grab
years of
that one, yeah.
experience?
Sorry, I missed that. Yeah, there you go. This is a good one. Yeah, so do you do you have any thoughts on this?
So, what schools are friendly to older candidates with 15 plus years of experience? Is it advisable to still apply if I have my GMAT scores
Right.
available?
So they still have a GMAT, maybe they took it, like, 4 years ago, it's
Yeah,
still valid, they're thinking they're gonna apply, they're worried they're too old.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
I
I think
mean,
it gets
yeah, it's tricky.
some of my response will be similar to one of the earlier questions when the question was more centered around interviews. But you know, when I was at Wharton, we would have folks in that Wharton class with 15 plus years of experience. But it would be a class the size of 800 or 900 folks, and there wouldn't be that many of them, but they'd be there, right? So why are they there? Because they showed that their decision to get the MBA makes perfect sense at this stage of their career. They're really thoughtful in terms of how they're pivoting, et cetera, et cetera. They thought long and hard about it and so forth. And their decisions are very realistic in terms of how this MBA can enable their next piece of their career, etc. So if all those things are in place, then most schools will be listening. Now, which schools are more friendly? I know you have a bit of a theory about this, Graham, like the whether Harvard or Stanford, do they take older candidates or you think they favor more younger candidates?
So it depends. I mean, it depends on the school. So I was just having some fun because I asked so aside from the interview simulator, I think most of our audience knows that we have a regular AI tool that's also built on every interview we've ever conducted with an admissions director, every article we've ever written. I mean, just tons and tons. We built this massive language model. And so I was asking it, and it confirmed what I thought, which is there are some schools that tend to have slightly more older candidates in the class. Obviously, the schools in Europe would be one place to look.
Yeah,
The INSEADs and LBSs of the world seem to be more open to older candidates. But within the states, and actually, I'll share this because it's kind of fun to see. But we, yeah, within the states, there's let's see. I just want to show this on screen. So I don't know if anyone can see that. I know we got to do something on the back end here to make it show. Let's see. There
there
we
you
go.
go.
So here we go. So I asked the question, do any top MBA programs like older applicants? say 15 years or more, which is exactly what our person asked. And they talk about how, gosh, most full-time MBA programs have like 5 years average, right? And that 10 plus years is less common and that you might face additional questions. But then they do get into the fact that Chicago Booth, Sloan, and Wharton are known for being a bit more receptive to applicants. Darden and Columbia as well. You'll notice Stanford and Harvard are not on that list. And I think you can see that in the average age when these schools
Yeah.
publish it. So anyway, this is a tool on our site as well that's free
And
that you can ask
actually,
it
if you
any.
scroll down a little bit, Graham, I just want
Yeah.
to show. No, oh, back up,
Oh,
back up. You've
sorry.
gone too far. There we go. The key points that I was trying to make: why now, fit, and post MBA goals. So obviously, this AI bot's trained on everything that I say. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Does that means that like you and I are out of a job soon? Once this thing,
Yeah,
really gets smart, we're done. Yeah. But in
yeah,
any
yeah,
event, so I think some schools are more receptive than others. I do think, as you say, yeah, you got to make the case that that you're gonna, get a lot out of it. There is this fear. I remember working in admissions that someone who is older is going to kind of show up for the classes, do their homework, but they'll just be almost like a commuter
yeah.
student. They're just going to get in, get the degree, get out, and they're not going to be part of the fabric of the kind of MBA community. And we got a couple more questions that have come in. Oh, this is interesting. We've got one about Kellogg applications. Does the GMAT or the GRE hold more weight for Kellogg? What say you, Alex?
Well, I think the GMAT test is tougher, and I think schools still do respect that. But I think if you're going to get an above average GRE score versus a median GMAT score, go take the GRE. I think the data suggests that schools are ambivalent, right? 50% of incoming class is GRE, 50% is GMAT, or it's getting close to that. So I would target the test about which you're most comfortable. If you want to take on the challenge and you're a non-traditional candidate and you want to prove to the AdCom that you've absolutely belong and the rigor of the thing, then yeah, go for the GMAT. But I think the GRE is absolutely fine at this point.
Yeah, yeah, for better or for worse, that's where we are now. Schools are, I would not, I would take the test that you're going to do better on. For the most part, I think that's, Kellogg is not going to, you know, prefer one over the other. Just get a,
Yeah,
get a good score that's in the range for them. Someone asked, can we show how to access that interview invite dates database? And I've just asked Vic on our team to share in the YouTube feed the link to that
yeah,
article. It's just it's a blog post on our website, and it's open to everyone. You don't need to be registered or anything to see it.
yeah,
Um, Now we have a good question here, Alex. This is a kind of a privacy question that someone's asking
yeah,
about the AI bot. They're saying, I want to use it, but will it keep my data? I'm worried about uploading my resume. Also, can we define older? I'll do the
yeah.
define older. I'll let you talk to the kind of privacy stuff. But I would say older is, substantially above the average number of years of work experience that a program has. So if a program has, 5 years, I would say once you're above 7 years, you're probably going to be viewed as slightly older. Or some people would say if you're over 30, that kind of puts you in the older category. But Alex, we have some guardrails in place on the AI bot so that people should feel okay about uploading, right?
Yeah, I'm just looking at how does what is MBAs? Why use the interviews? What realistic? How long the
Oh, you're looking at the
interview?
FAQ in the bot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where does my data go? So the MBA interview simulator is powered by OpenAI's ChatGPT models. When you use this tool, your responses, resume content, and conversation data are sent to OpenAI's servers for processing. Privacy considerations: whilst we take reasonable precautions with your data, we recommend avoiding sharing highly sensitive personal information, such as social security numbers, financial details, and confidential employer information.
Yeah.
During your practice sessions, focus on the professional experiences and stories that you will share. I mean, the point is, yes, your resume that you upload will be uploaded to OpenAI. So you could dummy down your resume before you did the interview on the simulator, or you could skip uploading the resume and still interview with that school.
Yes.
And in that case, you're probably not going to simulate exactly what the interview will be like at that school, but their first question will effectively say, tell me about your experience to date. And then the simulator will be able to move on from that to ask specific questions about each of your experiences. So I would say for your safest experience, you can just use the skip. For still a very good experience with the simulator, or just dummy down your resume a little bit. So make sure you take away any key confidential data points in that resume. We at ClearEmit do not store your resume. We never
Right.
see it. We never look at it. It's never shared with anybody on our end. Very
Yeah, it
clear.
does not. And our model is built, yeah, obviously we use OpenAI to build our tool. Yeah, and I would also argue, I mean, yeah, I would, if you're uncomfortable with this, which I mean, frankly, I don't see it as a high risk activity. It's not like you're sharing a social or,
Yeah,
bank account information. But if you're uncomfortable, look at your LinkedIn profile and see how that's set
exactly.
up. And maybe that's, I mean, often LinkedIn has a ton of information about someone,
Yeah,
but maybe a little bit fewer details and things. So, um, this is a question about Darden. I know we only have about 5 minutes left, so we'll
yeah,
just go kind of quick here. But this is a really good question because Darden is famous for their interview being different than other
mhm.
schools. Obviously, Wharton is famous too because theirs is a team based. But of all the like sort of regular interviews where you're sitting down with a person, tell me a little bit about Darden, Alex. Why is it different, and
So
how should
Darden
someone
doesn't
prepare?
ask for your resume, right? So
Yeah,
even on the simulator, if you upload your resume and then you select Darden, the first question will basically say, "I've not seen your resume, so let's kick on." So we try to simulate that directly in the simulator experience. But yeah, so you've got to tell your story from scratch, and a typical first question will be, "Tell me your story," right?
yeah,
And that gives the interviewer then a frame of reference to then apply follow-on questions. So I don't think the first question is necessarily that different in an interview with Darden, but it's much more important, that first question, because the interviewer has no knowledge of who you are before you sit down. In every other interview case, um, the interviewer at least has your resume in front of them. Whether they've looked at it, possibly, but they at least have it in front of them.
yeah. And I remember I talked to the admissions director at Darden, a couple years ago. So this would have been Donna Clark, and I asked about this, and she was, just talking about how they like the idea of a real clean slate. When you sit
Yeah,
down with someone, you're not biased by what you saw in the file or by how the resume looks or any of that. You're just sitting down for a conversation, and I think it does put more of the onus on the candidate in a way because you've got to be able to tell your story in a pretty compelling way because they don't have a visual guide to look at as you're walking them through. So you've got to be probably more concise and sort of organized in the way that you share your story. But I like the idea that it's meant to be a really unbiased way to sit with
yeah,
someone.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. So I think, Alex, that we have tackled all the questions. We actually managed to show off the new tool. This is an exciting time. Again, I expect Harvard will send a note out this week saying that interview invites are coming Monday of next week. It could come sooner, but if his history is any um, judge, it'll be Monday, and we also expect Stanford to keep trickling those invites out, and obviously a lot of the bigger guns, the Chicago's and Whartons that release all in one fell swoop are going to be still forthcoming. I think Ross falls into that category as well.
Yeah.
But already on Livewire, we see lots of invites. And if you do get an invite to a school, whether it's a Yale or a Berkeley or any of these schools that trickle them out Stern, please post to Livewire. It really helps the community. That's what we're here for. I mean, our goal as a company is to try to make this process a little less stressful and to give you a community to hang out with as you kind of go through it. That's why we do these monthly live streams. That's why we have our weekly podcast, Livewire. You can leave comments. So really engage in the community. That's what it's there for. But yeah, Ellie, is there anything else that you want to add, Alex, before we kind of wrap up things? I think we don't have any more questions here, so we're pretty good for once.
No, very good. It's time for me to go to the pub.
Yeah, that sounds good.
But best of luck,
Yeah.
everyone that's preparing to interviewing, and so forth. And yeah, I mean, hopefully you'll have great interviews and have great news. And we'll be back here in fourth Tuesday of February, right?
Yeah, I need to look at the calendar to figure out when that is. But yeah, let's call it let's see, that'll be the
24th.
24th, I believe. Yeah. All right. Let's do it on the
Yeah.
24th. That sounds good. Yeah. All right. So we'll see everyone then. Thanks again, Alex, for all of your help as
Yeah.
always. I love doing these with you. So we'll see everyone next month.
Yeah. Cheers,
Take care.
Graham. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
All right.
Good
Bye-bye.
luck.